I'm Barbara with Vision Now Ministries. Welcome back to our channel this week. Thank you for being with us. Would you like and subscribe and also make a comment and share the video if it blesses you? In today's climate, it is so good to know that we have a God who works in the background, and we are to walk by faith, not by sight, not by what we hear on the media, the mainstream media news, none of that. We have to put, as Christians, we have to put our faith in God. So I was reading in the Book of Esther yesterday. Oh, I'm reading the Old Testament these days, and I'm not the Old Testament. Excuse me, it is the Old Testament. I'm reading King James version these days, and the king in the Book of Esther has just dismissed his queen, who was very disobedient, and it's not good to be disobedient if your husband is the king. So he's looking for a new queen. Well, Mordecai has raised Esther up since she was a little girl. She lost her parents, and he stepped in and became her father. Actually, he was her cousin, but he raised her as his adopted daughter. So he tells her, go in and compete with the other women and see if you can become the queen. She was very beautiful and very well spoken. She had been very well taught and trained by Mordecai. So she enters, the the palace set aside for the women who are trying to be queen, and she won over the favor of the king and became the queen. Well, Haman was an enemy of the Jews. So he went in, and Mordecai was always in the the palace court, and checking on his cousins, actually his adopted daughter, to see how she was doing. He was there every day, just checking and listening to see how everything was going, making sure she was okay. Well, Haman was pretty high up. He was over all the princes of the kingdom, and when he would come through the courtyard, Mordecai wouldn't even acknowledge him. He wouldn't get out the way. He wouldn't bow down. He wouldn't do any of that. And this infuriated Haman. So he goes to the king and he said, there's a group of people among our people, and they don't worship the way we worship, and they don't honor you, and they don't even obey your laws. And the king's like, oh, really? He said, yeah, we need to get rid of them. The king said, okay. He gives Haman his ring, seals an edict saying that we're going to get rid of this group of people next month. He gives a date. We're going to get rid of the whole group of them. Well, Mordecai hears of this, and he calls for Esther to come and talk with him. He says, Esther, I need you to go before the king and speak on behalf of your people, our people, the Jewish people, to spare our lives. She said, I can't go before the king. No one can step into his presence without being invited, or they'll risk being killed. Now, if he lowers his scepter, then I can enter, but whoever is not summoned by the king will be put to death. He said, look, you've been put here for such a time as this. This is why you're here. You're not here just because you were so pretty and you deserve to be here. God has put you here to save his people. So she's thinking, she said, okay, well, tell you what, you and all the Jews you can get to please start fasting. Fast for 3 days, fasting and praying for 3 days. I'll pray and fast myself, plus my handmaidens. We'll do this for 3 days. And they did. They sought God diligently without food for 3 days in prayer. So then she says, okay, I'll do it. I'll risk my life. I'll lay down my life for my people. So she goes before the king without being summoned. He hadn't called for her for the past 30 days. She went before him. And he says, my queen. He gave her the scepter, and she entered into his presence. He was not angry. He did not have her put to death. He said, what is it you want? Anything. up to half of my kingdom. And she said, I'm preparing a meal this evening, and I would love it if you and Haman would come. He said, oh, we sure will. How wonderful. So they come and they have a meal, and he asks her again, what is it you want, my queen? You can have whatever it is, up to half of my kingdom. And she says, well, I'm preparing a feast tomorrow, and I really would love for you and Haman to come to the feast. He said, we sure will. Haman left there. He was so excited. He went and told his wife and all his family members, I'm going to be with the king and the queen at this banquet tomorrow. So it's time for the banquet, and they come, they're eating, and the king says, what is it you want? Up to half of my kingdom is yours, my queen. She said, there's someone in your kingdom, right here in the palace, who has told you that you need to kill all the Jews, that I am a Jew myself. And he said, what? That's what that was about? That's what that edict was about? She said, yes. He said, well, who would do such a thing? Who is that wicked person? And she said, the person right there at your right side. He said, what? He was infuriated, so he steps out onto the balcony, probably to regain his composure. So Haman knows his days are up. He runs over to where the queen is reclining, and he trips and falls right into her lap. And the king comes in at that exact moment, and he said, you tried to have my queen and all her people killed. Now you're going to try to molest her right here in my presence? And he calls for his guards. He said, do away with him. And the guards said, well, there just happens to be a gallows that was just built. Haman had built a gallows for Mordecai, because when his time was up, when those Jews were to be killed, he was going to have Mordecai hung. He hated Mordecai. The king said, take him and have him hung on those gallows that was made for Mordecai. So Haman was killed. Now, if you're facing an impossible situation where it looks like there's no hope, know that God is always working in the background. He set that whole scenario up. Esther was raised by Mordecai, put in a high position. Haman hates the Jews, tries to kill off all of them, but God is working in his behalf, in their behalf of the Jewish people. Know that he's working in your behalf also. Many years ago, God spoke to me. People will say now, it wasn't an audible voice. Well, I heard it. Is that audible? I heard him say, always leave room for the miracle. Now, over the years, I forget it, but when I'm in a hard spot, I'll remember his words. Always leave room for the miracle. That was a miracle that saved the Jewish people that day. God is always, look around now, what's happening in the country. Don't be deceived. Don't be fooled and tricked. God's working in behalf of his church, his Jewish people, his church, Christians. He's working in our behalf. It may not look like it, but you watch how he's setting things up. He's setting certain things in motion. He's behind the scenes working in our behalf. I love you. God loves you more. You be blessed.